Well, I moved to Richmond Hill 31 years ago when I married a hometown guy, and we've been giving back to this community ever since. I've had 4 girls. All of them have gone to school out here in Bryan County. So everyone in my household is an alumni, Wildcat alumni, except myself, because I grew up as an Army brat. My last employment was United Way Director of Bryan County, and I served that for 7 years, and only resigned because we lost our 14-year-old daughter to cancer. And I got up off the couch during that last campaign. She passed in June. The campaign ran from September to November. And I did that, and we topped $200,000. But then I was in the middle of all the grief, and so I resigned. There had been some change in leadership at the time, and I just felt like I wasn't up to handling all the changes. And so I resigned in January, worked through March, and then I felt the Lord leading me to run for city council. And I'm not a politician, so had never considered running for council or any seat. And after that loss, I felt like the Lord was saying, well, you can still have a voice for your people, because being United Way Director, you know, I had my thumb on the pulse of the community, and this was just another way to be a voice for those that felt like they weren't heard or felt like they didn't know what was going on, and could be a conduit between those residents and city council and government and what was taking place and the choices and decisions that were being made about their futures. I see a lot of things that we could tweak a bit or enhance. We've done a really good job since I've been on there. However, our current mayor is termed out and he can't run again. And I feel like my skill set and the connections that I've made, because I do serve on 3 advisory panels for Georgia Municipal Association, which is the organization that oversees and helps provide advocacy and support and training for cities across Georgia. I feel like I'm prepared and ready to take on this responsibility, because we're really at a pivotal point in our history. With the growth that we've experienced over the last couple years, we can no longer act like we're that small town that we were 30 years ago when I moved here. We need to keep that culture and that feel, but we really need to ramp up now because we're more of a larger city. I was just appointed to the Development Authority for Bryan County, so I just had a 2-day retreat. And I think the key here is the communication. I think us listening to the residents, having those town halls, having the forums, being able to have maybe lives on Facebook and be able to hear from the people first before we make decisions. I think that's where there's, as you know, the big topic about the airport right now. I made the statement that I feel like that was kind of done backwards. I feel like if we had provided information to the people and given them some data and some explanation first, I think it would have been received a little bit differently by some people. Some people are still going to be in opposition of it. But I think it all comes down to the communication. I think we need to listen to them. It's not quite time to do our new comp plan, but once we start looking at that, of course, we're going to have to take all this growth into effect or into account as we move forward with the new comp plan too, and what that needs to look like. We've got several issues that people are interested in. Downtown, we don't have walkable space. You know, you hear about bicycle riders that are fearful of riding along 144 because there's no bike lane. And educating people too, because a lot of people that live here, because we all have the zip code 31324, people don't realize the difference between the city limits and the unincorporated county. A lot of people don't realize that the bike lane on 144 is, you know, that's a state highway. That's not really something the city oversees. So I really feel like we need to do a lot more communication and education with our residents. And that's what I plan to do. I plan on doing lives on Facebook and bringing in different people from different departments and helping share information, because a lot of times it's just because people don't know. So we're currently in the process right now on council of tweaking our ordinance about the stormwater runoff with new developments. So that's actually in the works right now, meaning the amount of stormwater pre-development, we're going to ask them to capture more than they're required post-development. So that's one thing. I do think impact fees are important. I know they're controversial, but when it comes to public safety, I think impact fees are something that we need to put in place. Regarding housing, there's really not a whole lot city government can do regarding housing. I know a lot of people complain about the rent, but we don't really have anything to do with that. We are working towards trying to lower taxes. The city rolled their millage rate back this year for the first time, and I don't know when. The county has rolled theirs back. There are going to be two things on the ballot that actually impact your property tax, and government can't advocate for or against that, but it's really important for people to know before they get to the polls what those two are, and that they understand what those are, because those could impact their property taxes.
Yeah. And I know the city and county leaders, kind of received some, or maybe we received some complaints about maybe city and county leaders not being present during, for example, Tropical Storm Debbie, which is like the most recent hard-hitting storm to this area.
Yeah.
Other than Helene, which was just kind of wind. But can you share with residents a little bit about how you would be involved, maybe when there's another major weather event, or, maybe there's just an incident that happens in the community? Will you kind of be that person that, they'll see helping or volunteering?
So to that point, though, a lot of the people just don't have the correct information. So our mayor was actually stuck behind floodwaters and couldn't get out. Both our city manager and assistant city manager happened to be out of town at the time. So there was a lot of us behind the scenes. You didn't see us out there necessarily bagging sandbags, but we were working together. I mean, I was on the phone every morning and every evening with Carter Enfinger, the county commissioner, our PIO, our fire chief. We were working on talking with Ben Taylor, getting pumps delivered. I mean, Ben was calling me in the middle of the night about pumps being delivered at 3:30 in the morning. There was a lot of behind the scenes going on that the residents didn't recognize, so we were actually active. Now, did all of us make all the right decisions? Absolutely not. Everybody made some mistakes through that whole process. Thankfully, now we have an emergency management director, Allie Pageant, with the county, who is now going to come in and oversee everything. At that time, we had a fill-in emergency management because our prior director had just retired. And so, but as far as the city goes, after that occurred, through Georgia Municipal Association, they decided to put together a group of people, and they selected me because of our experience here. So I was one of 25, 30 people that actually got on a committee, and we established a council, and we actually wrote policies and best practices for disasters. Now, that's not just hurricanes and floods, because that could be a train derailing, that could be a chemical spill, So we actually all got together, and then I was able to present on a webinar across the state. So I feel like we're in a much better position now, and having that collaboration with Allie, with EMA, I think the residents are going to be happy with the changes that are in place. My house flooded back during Matthew in 2016. So, and the weight of the floodwater collapsed a third of my foundation. So it actually took us 6 years to get back into our home. And insurance did not cover the foundation issues. So that was a $42,000 cost that was not covered. So I do understand what they've all been through, and it is traumatic. I have, my youngest daughter has Down syndrome, and to this day, when it just starts to rain, she walks around my room, she turns on every light, and she lifts every curtain up onto the furniture beside it, and she goes and gets bath towels and heads to the doors. So it's a traumatic experience. People are triggered still now years later, and it is something that we have to, understand is extremely important, and we've got to do everything we can to ensure that that doesn't happen again. I have a list of things, of course, but one of the things, I serve on the Georgia Municipal Association's Children and Youth Council, and I would like to bring a youth council if I'm elected. I think it's really important. So I've already reached out to the Department of Juvenile Justice contact about potentially having some of the children that are considered at risk. I used to be a juvenile probation officer, so that is a group of people that have my heart and I'm passionate about, and I think that we need to provide opportunities for all children, and I'm looking forward to that. And I have several other things on my list that I would like to put in place, but that's probably one of the ones that really touch my heart the most. It is historic. It's amazing to think that here we are now in a position where we could have a female mayor. We have one in Pembroke, we have one in Pooler, which is within our region. But really, more importantly, to me is what kind of legacy would I want to leave as a leader? And I would want to leave the legacy that I was compassionate, that I tried to ensure that everyone had equal opportunity, that we were inclusive, and that we provided the needs that the residents need, and that I helped increase their quality of life and enhance their quality of life. To me, that legacy is so much more important than the fact that I would be a female. Because when I think about the role of mayor, I don't think about male, female. I think the work that's involved. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's a lot of responsibility, because I feel as though I would be responsible for the quality of life of the people that live here. And I would want to do that well.